What's up? This is Diva, delivered, inspired, victorious, anointed, and I'm here with my hoodlums, and we gonna talk some trash today because y'all, my husband is everywhere doing silly stuff. I'm sorry, but we are going to talk some trash today. Now, trash is talking real and seeking to heal, and we have with us the prolific professor of Old Testament scripture, an expert, Dr. Dora Mbuwayesango. I hope I said your last name correctly. And so what we're going to do today is just ask her some questions about sexuality in the Bible. We were supposed to talk about hotels, the EP. We'll probably throw a little of that in here, but when you score a coup like having such an expert in your midst, then we have to take advantage of that. So good evening, everyone, and good evening, Dr. Dora.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening, Deidre. It's a privilege to be with you, ladies.
All right. So let's just go ahead and get it started. We try to do 1 hour. And so I'm going to go ahead and start because I did come up with some questions for Dr. Dora. The main one for me and a lot of us women, I've always heard Genesis 3:16 used to basically subjugate women, and most of the translations seem to corroborate that. Based on your knowledge, what is a more accurate interpretation? Is this verse really telling women that we shall be, subjugated by men and men shall be the head of everything?
In the first place, I don't think that the Bible should be looked at, passages should be looked at out of context.
Mm-hmm.
So Genesis chapter 3, verse 16 is part of Genesis chapter 2, verse
Mm-hmm.
1, where we have the story that begins with Adam and Eve coming into being.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is it talking about
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning? So we have the beginning of it saying, God makes Adam,
Mm-hmm.
an earthly creature, a thing that's made from dust from the ground and water from the pool, from the little river, and then the breath of God that makes it a living being.
Mm-hmm.
And then we progress to where God evaluates the work that God has created
Mm-hmm.
and says this human thing is not complete.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite good. And so
Mm-hmm.
we change from the Genesis 1, where we have everything being good, 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 and then very good. But then we have this way where we have God evaluating and saying, no, it ain't good. I need to correct this.
Mm-hmm.
And the first correction is what? The first correction is making animals.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is that the human is lonely. This human figure, this earthly figure is lonely. And to correct that, God first creates animals and brings them to the human. And there is some connection because the human names these things, gives them their specific names. And again, these are etiologies.
Mm-hmm.
They're an explanation for things as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's explaining, where do animals come from?
Mm-hmm.
Who said that's a lion, that's a leopard?
Right.
It's the human. But there is no intimacy between animals and humans. Okay. So our etiologies are continuing in that the explanation is what is the appropriate intimate connection for the human. So animals, yes, they have a connection, but it's not intimate. And so, because they are not of the same substance, although they are made from the earth, like the human, from dust, like the human, they are not from the same substance. So you have this way of telling a story that's very imaginative and creative. And so God has to work with the human, the earthly being that God has created from the beginning, and work on that, do some operation. So it's put into deep sleep. And then God puts it into two beings. So what you realize is that what hasn't been done was sexual differentiation. That says this is a male, this is a female. And so that's done. But you also want to know who is telling the story, from whose perspective. And as you can tell, it's being told from a male perspective. So when the experiment works, the way that God knows that it's worked is when the human and the woman, a woman is created and brought to the being who is now a man. And we have the word ish and isha. So ish man, isha woman, and they are brought to, the man is the one who speaks and says, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, which simply is in a poetic way of saying, here is, we are of the same substance. So there is compatibility, there is intimacy. And so the story then jumps over, and the narrator comes back and says, and gives a reason to say, therefore a man shall leave his mother and father and cling to his woman, which is not about marriage. Because a man does not leave mother and father. In the Israelite context, in the biblical context, it's the woman who leaves her people and comes to her husband's people. So this is not talking about a husband-wife relationship. As you like it, Deidre, it's talking about sex. So men says, well, the question is, why are men drawn sexually to women? And so the answer is, men is claiming what originally was part of him. So they come back together to become one. So it's just sex, is birds and bees. Yeah. So the end of that is that the story ends with a cliffhanger that says, well, they are very compatible. They are not ashamed in front of each other. So the sexuality is going on good. Then we jump to chapter 3, which is now your section. And now we have man and woman and the snake from the world of animals that, they are all together, supposed to be in harmony. But then the snake does his thing. So I'm not, those stories. So I'm not going to, yeah. So we have got the explanation for heterosexuality from a male perspective. And now we move to heterosexuality, again from a male perspective, but looking at female sexuality. So the question is, why do women have sex with men when it leads to pain? Because you will get pregnant and carry that baby, and then you will suffer pain in childbirth. As I always say, if I hear a woman screaming and I know what caused it, I will not do it. And if I did it once, and I know the pain it brings, I will not do it again. So the mystery is, why do women continue to have sex with men, which will lead to pain? And the answer is because they have sexual desire. And the translation there is, it will have power over you. Yeah. So your sexual desire has power over you, that you forget about the pain. Yeah, that's how I explain it myself.
So it's not the man that will control you. It's the sexual desire. Now, if anybody know that they done bust a window out of a car over a man, and you know exactly what that is. And see, I got a revelation in prayer years ago on that. And then when I was sitting in your class and you said that, I say, hey, confirmation. Because I think that, and I know that you can explain this better, but I think that sex has been used through what is written in the Bible to control and subjugate women for so long that we end up with feelings of guilt if we enjoy it. Like we're bad girls if we like sex. There's something wrong with us. At least that's what society tried to tell us in my day. I don't know about what the younger girls are going through, but I think that having that clarified is going to set some people free.
Right. Yes, and it also, one way of looking at it also is that it is not talking about the totality of sexuality, because sex is not just intercourse. So there are all kinds of sex that takes place with people. And also you see that there is a promotion of heterosexuality from a male perspective that dismisses actually the actual experience, sexual experience of a whole lot of people, including heterosexuals. Yeah. So you know that that's limited to sex that ends with you getting pregnant. It doesn't talk about the kissing that goes on, or all other forms of sex that takes place out there in the world that I don't know nothing about.
Well, did anybody else want to have a question that they want to, like, along that vein? Because I have another one, but I want to give y'all a chance too, because I was ready for this. But if you have a question along those lines, please feel free to jump in and ask Dr. Dora that question before I move on to my next subject that I got written down here.
Okay, I was just going to ask, because like you, Deidre, certainly growing up in the tradition of women really being subjugated to, you have to be this kind of way. Our sexuality kind of, you could not express it, whereas it was okay and considered normal, a passage of right, if you will, for men to quote unquote sow their wild oats and all of this. But women, you were looked down upon if you did that. And in some church traditions, if there was marriage out of wedlock and things like that, the women were called up, young girls called up and made to apologize in front of the church, but it was always the woman, never the man.
Pregnant.
Yeah. Right. And this whole being scared into virginity and saving yourself because of this thing called soul ties. So I wanted to ask Dr. Dora, what is her thought on this idea that if you have sex outside of marriage and you've had more than one partner, that your souls become intertwined, and you have all of these people and all these different spirits in you and on you because you have had sex with multiple partners. Is that a thing? Some people feel like there's no such thing as soul ties. Other people are adamant about it. Do you think soul ties are of biblical relevance, or is that something that people just made up to keep our legs closed?
It's something that people made up.
Okay.
But also it kind of has an element of patriarchy, which the Bible is. So, women do not have, in the Bible, women do not have sexual autonomy. Right. Men do. So, and we see that practice even in today's world, how female bodies, we don't own our own bodies. The whole society wants to have something to say about our own body. You see how people go on about abortion.
Right.
How people deny reproductive health care to women.
Right.
Because for some reason, just the idea that God made us be able to carry babies 5 months and pump them out means that our bodies don't belong to ourselves. So that's one of those ideas where, yes, men can have sex wherever, as long as they are not intruding on other males' rights over their women.
Right.
But women belong, so men don't belong to women. The sexuality of men don't belong to women. But the sexuality of women is supposed to belong to men. And so that's a very bad, that should be rejected. And also it makes women be fearful of sex. So that it's not a joy, it's not a joy. it's a burden. It's something we lack knowledge of sex, and our mothers think they don't tell us the truth about sex. They want to keep on with the patriarchal role they have been given, socialized to do. And so, no, I don't believe in such things. Because if it were the same, it would be the same for men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sandra, did you have a question?
Yes. So Dr. Dora, so what are your thoughts then as preachers and teachers of the word that we have been used to beat us down over the years, beat women down over the years? What do you think is our role as female preachers today?
Your role
Mm-hmm.
is to bring the good news of God.
Yes.
And that comes out of a critical view of the Bible.
Yeah.
That comes out of analyzing the Bible in ways that that also reveal the works that oppress people and reject that, and help young people, young women, and men too, to be liberated from these oppressive views that are put, and which in some cases is just eisegesis or proof texting, that you don't actually read the whole text.
Right.
You get meaning out of it that you can wrestle with. You just pick a verse, a phrase that doesn't mean anything, and you run with it and make havoc on your way to wherever.
Right. Right. Cherry picking the Bible. Okay.
You have muted yourself, Deidre.
Deidre, you're muted. We can't hear you, Deidre.
I'm good. The one thing that I have learned by going to seminary was that context is so important. And since we're on that vein, and thank you, Dr. Dora, for leading us right where we needed to go. People often take verses out of the Bible out of context and use them to control, demean, or even legislate the behavior of people who aren't considered normal. Can you help us understand Leviticus 20:13 in the proper context?
Well, can you read it to me? Tell me what it says.
Okay, so you're gonna make me read it, and I don't have it pulled up, but I'm gonna pull it and read it because I got my Bible right here on my phone, and I'm just gonna chit chat real quick while I'm pulling it up. Let's see, Leviticus.
I have it if you want me to read it.
Go ahead.
Leviticus 20:13. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall be put to death. Their blood is upon them.
Yeah. Can you give us the proper context for that? Because people throw that around all of the time. Some people don't even know what book of the Bible it's in. But they heard no, I'm serious. But they heard somebody else say it, and they throw it around to batter other people. And I would really like for you to help us with the context.
Okay. So the context is that, again, we are in a patriarchal society that's focusing on a production, that the man has the seed. Yeah. So the man, he has the seed, and the woman is just an incubator. So if a man is putting his seed where it won't end up with a child, producing a child, that's wasting seed. So in the whole context of that, it's that whole idea that there is a wasting of seed that's happening. So yes, it's probably real prohibiting sexual intercourse that is the sexual intercourse that produces that semen and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we can admit that it's saying that. But the other side of that is, well, how do homosexuals have sex? Do they do it the same way as I'm just being clinical here.
Mm-hmm.
Do they do it the same way as heterosexuals do? Also, don't heterosexuals do those things that homosexuals do? So what is being prohibited here? And how do we go about policing it?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So
Mm-hmm.
it's all complicated and not something that you don't go into people's bedrooms. You don't want people in your bedrooms, do you?
No.
And so it's a whole thing that's something that is prohibiting something that wasn't even, that does not even qualify as what we call homosexuality today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a limited, and it's something that is oppressive,
Mm-hmm.
and also viewed in a way that says, that looks down at women, that makes women as a vessel, that doesn't give autonomy to women. And and you see that lesbianism is not prohibited. Yeah, there is no law that says a woman shall not lie with another woman as with a man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, why is that? Because there is no exchange of seed. Yeah. And you, in the same thing, if you read further on, it also prohibits bestiality. A woman, where a man is having a sex with an animal, and a woman is having sex with a male animal, because then you're wasting the seed of the animal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So think about it. You can tie yourselves into knots with things that really don't matter, don't define what humanity is, what sexuality is. It's all complicated, and people do it differently in every relationship.
Mm-hmm. That was
Wow.
good. That was good. I just need to I need to
Yeah,
marinate on that for a moment, because really, when you've heard this stuff all your life, and you hear, and my grandma has said some, when she was living, it was about a tattoo, but she said, I read it in the Bible, and that is what made it, that's what cemented it. That's what solidified it. She read it in the Bible. And I think, again, this is where context comes in, because now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will, in this part of the Bible, weren't these instructions for specific people at this particular point, what they were saying, or was that, am I misunderstanding that?
Well, no, see, for the whole point is, it's defining who Israel is.
Okay.
And trying to mitigate, for the most part, it's tying religion and social life and political life and everything. So, and actually it's talking about male relationships, male encounters, because you see how in the same book of Leviticus, it defines who a man can have sex with. Yeah, you can't have sex with your mother because she belongs to your father. You can't have sex with so and so. So it goes on and on, and it's not addressed to women. It doesn't say women should not have. Yeah, and so men can have sex with prostitutes that we look down upon, but they can have sex and pay for it. They just don't disgrace themselves by not paying, and then and be exposed, in that way. But so but the women sexuality is only defined as promiscuous, while men's sexuality, as they saw their odds, is not seen as promiscuous.
Right.
That's something there. That's a double standard. that should not be allowed to continue, whether it's in the Bible or anywhere else.
And Dr. Dora, how much of translation over the years do you think also has added to that? I remember reading some article that particularly with that particular scripture, that we didn't begin to have that interpretation of this whole thing being about God being against homosexuality until like the 1930s, when it started to be interpreting that way. So just over time, the Bible being translated again in the various languages, that some of the original meaning, because, okay, I sat in your class too, and I know that God only speaks in Hebrew, right? So whether it's German or the various languages, that we began to lose some of the translation, and people began to put their own opinion into the interpretation of scripture.
Yes, and that's what I was pointing to, is to saying, what does it mean to lie with a man as with a woman? What does that mean?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the whole point. Those you come into your understanding or your translation of that, and your understanding of that is fed from your context now.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the point. And the words homosexuality and all that, yes, came in way later. They are not biblical terms at all, whether in English or what. So yes.
Okay.
That is amazing. Sandra, do you have something?
Well, my next question will probably change the topic. So you go.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask Dr. Dora, because Pia brought up about the translation about Lot and his daughters. And so I wanted to know, because some translations say that the men came to Lot's house looking to have sex with the other men, and some translations say that they came. I think it says to be with them.
They wanted
to know them, and so we know that to know, in the Bible can mean to have sex, but it can also mean to know. Right. So I wanted to know from you, Dr. Dora, clarification about that, because for me, the thing is that's always overlooked is that Lot offers up his daughters. It is your father offering you up to these men instead. And I think that's overlooked because everybody, they were homosexuals and they came looking to these men to have sex. So I want to know, for clarification from you, what is the real interpretation of that text?
Well, I don't know if I will give you the real interpretation. I will give you my interpretation. Yes, I'll give you my interpretation. I don't know if it's real or not.
Okay.
So the first place, remember, we have talked about context.
Right.
We always go back to that context. And one of the things that I like, that's why I like the Hebrew Bible. The way they tell stories is very imaginative, creative, and very poetic. And the way they develop characters. So you need to pay attention to the characters.
Okay. Yeah.
So in the first place, the men came and said, we want to know. It was not defined.
Right.
It is Lot who interpreted what they meant. Yeah, it is Lot that interpreted what they meant.
Okay.
And he then goes forward to offer his daughters.
Yeah.
So if he had interpreted it as if they wanted to know who these men, they have allowed to come into their neighborhood.
Right.
When he has no authority, he's a foreigner in their land.
Yes.
And he is allowing these people to come in and they just want to interrogate them.
Right.
And it's Lot who put sexuality into it. and
Wow.
offers his daughters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then it's again put in the context of hospitality.
Right.
Wow.
And so that's the whole thing. And so he says for Lot, and he's the one who says, it's women who deserve to be treated that way.
Mm.
And also to see it as homosexuality is wrong,
Right.
because it's not homosexuality. Lot wanted his daughters to be raped by a gang of people, a gang of men, and they actually, it's exaggerated, says the whole town, all of them came, all men came. So that gang, you cannot say that is talking about homosexuality, which is a relationship between one man and one man.
Right.
And when a woman is gang raped, we don't call that a heterosexuality.
That's right. That's right.
It's rape.
That's right.
Yeah. So there is no, Genesis 19 is not talking about homosexuality in any form, in any
Right.
kind.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, you read the story again with that idea of who is interpreting what the men are saying wrong, who is putting the seed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will realize what's going on there. So I like the way stories are told
Mm-hmm.
in the Hebrew Bible. It makes you think. You need to look closely at
Right.
what is being said and how it's being said.
Mm.
That's
Good
powerful.
stuff.
Yes,
It's like,
ma'am.
it's so enlightening to really, and I would wish that people would take more time to really understand the importance of context. You can't take something that happened in a different culture, in a different time, when there was less technology and people didn't know things about medicine, all that, and you can't take it and put it smack dab in the middle of 2021 and think that it's relevant, because it's not. And I think that and somebody's gonna say, now, ain't she a pastor? She trying to say the Bible ain't relevant no more? That's not what I'm saying.
No.
You
Right.
understand it in the proper context before you can then glean the golden nuggets that can help you today. But if you don't understand it in the context of its original writing, then how can you say you understand it at all?
Right. Can I pose a question to the group? Anybody could answer. So then, because particularly we exist in the Bible Belt, right? And so much of this has been indoctrinated into the congregations of where we serve. How then do we teach this in a way that is palatable? I know there's going to be some criticism or, you know, some backlash to a certain extent, but so often I think we clam up because we are afraid of the backlash. And, you know, if you know the truth shall set you free. But there's so many people who all of them need to hear it, but there's someone in there that really truly needs to be liberated. So how do you overcome the fear of backlash, and where do you find, you know, how do you do it? You know, not every text is meant to be preached across the pulpit versus taught in a Bible study. What do you think is the right way to begin to speak truth to power? Anybody?
Well, I will say that for me, I had this little saying that I used to say to my son, and I say it on all of my little morning coffee videos: you can eat the entire world one bite at a time. And so what I try to do is I'm trying to bring people along with me. When I learn something that sets me free, I try to give it to them a little bit at a time. So I might make it into a funny story. I might make it into a poem. I might put a little bit of my personality in there, so that, because when you make people laugh, they let their guard down. So I kind of, when I'm kind of trying to teach something that I know people have always heard one way, but I've learned that that's really not it, and try to put it in the proper context. I kind of try to put it in a jokey joke little way, but then after they leave me, they're like, you know, because all we can do is plant seeds.
Right.
We can't, you know, some plant, others water. God will add the increase. So
Sure.
we plant the seed to get people to start thinking differently. And it might not even take a lot to do that.
Right.
Just a little teeny weeny bit of something, one bite at a time. That's what I do.
Okay.
So, Pia, I would say, well, first let me start by saying that I guess I jumped the gun one day in Sunday school because I had picked up on the text in different translations saying different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, do you really think the men came to have sex, with the men that were strangers in town? Oh yes, they shot me down, they jumped all over me, woof. And I just, okay, if that's what you believe, I'm just saying that, I was asking for them to maybe, dig in and discuss it some more, but
Yeah.
that didn't go over very well.
Right. Right.
So my thing is that people have to have that desire. And I think this is why I like this setup that Deidre has and having guests like Dr. Dora,
Sure.
because it will light a spark in some people,
Sure.
that may want to now say, hey, I really need, better interpretation, to get better interpretation of the word. And so I don't know how they will go about doing it, but I just think that everybody is not in the same place that we are.
Right. Right.
The other thing I would say that might help to try is to have a what I call contextual Bible study.
Okay.
Where you are simply asking questions and people are sharing. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. And usually we do contextual Bible focused on some particular action we want people to do, or a particular issue that we want, like, understanding sexuality.
Sure.
Or even this understanding the biblical view on sexuality in the context of us, our day. How how society is against homosexuality and all that, and leads to young men and other people suffering. And so you want to change the attitudes of people. And so I would pick this particular passage with them and say, let's read it together, and go slow by slow and say, who are the characters? Who do you identify with? And all that. And then go along and say, and ask questions that say, what did the men want? Just read the text.
Right.
What did the men want? Then people will go around and say what they think the men want. You are not saying anyone is wrong and anyone is right. Then you move on and says, what did Lord understand them to be saying?
Wow.
Then you see where it all changes. Then you go on and you continue and ask, how Lord understood what the men want? How did he thought the solution would be?
Okay.
What made him? What's good about that?
Right.
And you move on and you move on, and people will begin to say, if this was my daughter, and if this was me,
right,
how is that gelling?
Right.
So you get to the understanding of how do people understand sexuality, sex?
Sure.
What is rape? What is gang rape? If anyone ever experienced or seen or heard about gang rape, what is involved?
Right.
Would you say a person who is gang raped wanted it?
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
Contextual Bible study.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm thinking that is really, I got to write that down because.
Look, I didn't grab my book.
Yeah, because really it could, when you put things like we've talked about this whole time, and the main thing, like I said, I learned is how important context is.
Absolutely.
I mean, you could even go so far as to start geographically and say,
Right.
let's put them in the geographic context. Now let's put them in the cultural context. Now let's put them in the social context. And once you do that, if somebody still decides that they're gonna, well, that's what I always heard, and that's the way it's going, and there are
Right.
people like that. And if they want to be that, some people don't want to be delivered.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting, I find that the Black church generally, we struggle with teaching context. When presenting scripture and Bible study and things like that. I remember working for another organization straight out of college. This is pre seminary and all of that. So I had no clue with seminary, but it was a religious organization that I worked for. And part of the job, we had to take the residents to Bible study into Sunday service because it was a residential program. And that particular pastor, whenever he began the Bible study, he always gave the historical context of the scripture. He gave the cultural context. And that just opened up a whole new world because I had never sat in a Bible study like that before. And it gave me so much of a wider view versus being so myopic and only studying it based on what you've always heard. And I remember in class, Dr. Dora said some time ago, we were talking about Job. And everybody, and I remember being in church when we studied Job, when Satan goes before God and God says, where have you been? Everybody without fail, without skipping a beat, without blinking will say, Satan responds with, to and fro, seeking whom I may devour. And we said that in Old Testament class, and Dr. Dora was like, no. What does it say? And nowhere does it say seeking whom I may devour. And we're all looking like, now wait a minute, this must be the wrong Bible because I know that's what it says. I know what it say. But so often we've heard things or people have put things and we just take it, and without even going to seminary. We're not dealing in a generation now that is necessarily illiterate. They don't read it until they get to the Bible. The preacher say, turn to the Leviticus. A lot of times that's the first time they've even looked at that particular scripture to even have an idea. So yes, context is so key. And I wish our churches would put more energy into with our Bible study, giving that background to set it up before we even delve into the teaching.
Because we do it with everything else.
Right.
But we act like we're afraid to deviate from what has always been done. But I mean, come on, we ain't still using the same old telephone we used to use. Right. You know, because telephones have gotten better. You can put it in your purse, put it in your pocket, you know, but yet we will use interpretations and ideas of scripture, which is supposed to be so important and tantamount to our lives as Christians. And we will keep something that somebody said, like my grandma say, I read it in the Bible. And that's it. I read it in the Bible. But yeah, I think that we should become more familiar with the text that we, you know, and I mean, like just being in Dr. Dora's class, and I'm talking about the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures. You know, I had to learn all of these things because this, the Hebrew scriptures don't come from nowhere. You know, it's not just something that just somebody was walking down the street and a Bible fell and there it was. And it does have a context. It does have a culture. It has, you know, all of these different things. They're laws for a specific group of people. And when you forget that, then you can't find what's good in it that you could apply. I read a lot of self-help books. I know that everything is not written specifically for me, but when I read the book, I find the thing that speaks to my situation and try to apply it, you know, stretch it out like cellophane and put it over the salad bowl in the refrigerator of my life. That's what I try to do. And I think that that's the thing that we have become afraid to do and almost been trained not to do, because we have to, well, it's the Bible, you have to respect it. I had somebody tell me, it ain't no Bible but the King James Version. Excuse me, it's a translation of a different language.
Right.
I don't care what kind of Bible, if you read it in English, unless you speak Hebrew, you know, you don't understand it. And I think that we really need to, as preachers, like you were saying, Pia, we need to try to be more fearless when it comes to those things. Try to help, because we have a responsibility along with our calling, and we will be held accountable. So we need to do our
seminaries may need to consider possibly hood, because so many of our pastors, our preachers come back so afraid. They have the information, but how often do we run into people who've gone to seminary and never use it in practice?
Yeah.
Right? We have this knowledge, but we're so afraid of, what's going to happen, or not even knowing where to begin. How do I teach it? And so often I think, people just don't know how to teach that. Maybe that may need to be a course, because hood has such a niche in practical application, where we can walk out of class on a Monday or a Friday night and be able to apply some of the things we've learned in real time, versus it being steeped in research per se. But I think that is a good thing about hood. You can begin to apply those things in real time, but so many. And even when I was going to hood, and I don't know if that happened to any of you, I was pulled aside. Now, don't you get up there and get your mind filled up with all that stuff, because they don't believe in the Bible.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody, Dr. Dora ain't a Christian, and all of that. She don't believe in God, that whole thing. And they, I got the speech before I even met Dr. Dora. Now, let me tell you something about Dr. Dora class. Just give her what she wants so you can get out the class, but don't believe nothing. But it's, what I mean? So
but that's real.
But I want to say this though, Pia. For me, my seminary experience was really a wilderness experience, because I learned so much, and my drive was 4 hours each way, so I had a lot of time for that stuff to marinate, in me. And you want to apply it in your life, but then you want to teach other people, and I think you were saying this before, and that's where the problem is. You want to teach people what you've learned, because you want it to hit them like it hits you. But I'm no Dr. Dora.
Right.
But yeah, that stuff you do, it does marinate in your soul, and you do struggle with it. Like, what am I doing? What am I going to do with all this that I've learned? How are they going to receive this? So it's a delicate transition from that seminary, to be able to be in a platform where you can teach it with authority, and conviction.
And also, I think part of the problem is that usually when it has hit you, when you want to immediately tell others,
right,
and teach others, and yet they are not at your level.
Right.
They are not you are not giving a seminary course.
Right.
So it needs to be modified. It needs to be reconstituted to suit them.
Right.
You don't just go in front of people and say, oh, Jehovah is not God.
Oh, they walking out.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's not the way to, because you heard it from my class,
Mhm.
but you are not translating it in a way for the lay people.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a dance that you need to have. So
Right.
it first influences you.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's you who changes.
Mm.
Then your view of the Bible has changed.
Mhm.
And so what you're seeing in scripture is different. And so that's what you're teaching your people, not what the raw stuff that you are getting in seminar. That's
Right.
doing more harm. If you're doing that, you're doing harm to the people.
Right.
See, what I did was, I'm like I'm a word nerd. Everybody who knows me knows that I love words. I love to learn things. And so when I went to seminary, I literally deconstructed and reconstructed my theology. It
Sure.
helped me to understand what I really believe. And it helped me to, so those things that I had questions about, it helped me to put the questions in the proper place. I'm not saying they're not questions anymore, because they're still questions, but I know where to put those questions. And I know that, like you were saying, Dr. Dora, I can't just go and everything that I've learned, just
Right.
dump it on a congregation when I got people that's been going to the church since they've been reading the little yellow catechism.
Oh,
What
bless
I'm
it.
talking about?
Mhm.
And so what I try to do is let it work on me,
Right.
and let me consume it and reconsume it and reconstitute it, and go back to it. And I got all my books on my little Kindle, and I'm going in and I go back and look, because I know how I am. It's so much stuff going on up in here. So I'm trying to filter everything I do through the prism of what I've learned in seminary. And
Right.
everything don't fit in there.
Right.
But I think that was what it was for me. It was like you said, a wilderness journey where I deconstructed everything that I thought I knew,
Right.
and then rebuilt it with some different foundation, I guess.
Sure.
So
Well, it's the same way as when you preach.
mhm.
If you're preaching sermons that are for other people, you haven't done your work. A sermon should convict you first.
First.
Right.
That's right.
And then you can go out there and it will be powerful.
Mhm.
And most people do preaching for others. It hasn't touched them yet.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
Ladies, listen, it is almost 7:00.
Well, I want to
This
say
has been
something
amazing.
before
is-
you
I'm
before
sorry.
you close. I want to say to Dr. Dora, thank you for coming and joining us. I hope you come back again, because this was awesome, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
And yes,
Well, I enjoyed myself with you ladies. I'm actually particularly happy to see that Pia is still alive.
this is really I am so, this vision that I had to do this is so amazing to see it come to fruition. Pia, you and I have talked about this, I know, for over a year. And
Yes.
I had it in my head even longer. So thank you, Dr. Dora, for coming and just being yourself and talking to us and sharing your expertise, because I really believe that there's going to be somebody who's going to hear this, and they are going to be set free from some things.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Dora. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Pia. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lordy. And
And Tanya, I'm sorry you couldn't be here.
oh yeah, Tanya would really have enjoyed this. But so I will post this. Each of you will receive a link when it's on my YouTube channel. And I'm really going to work on some music and a cute little intro for us, because I think they're gonna be.
Yeah, I think you should edit it though. Go look
You think
inside.
I should edit it?
Yeah, I think
I'll look and see if because I like the what do you call it? Organic. I like that it's organic, because I think that there's no trying to make it perfect. It's just these.
No, I'm saying you can edit to remove what we are doing now.
Oh yeah, I'll edit that part out. Yeah, I'll edit that part out. You'll be fine, baby. But I think it's important for people to see that preachers, academics, we are just people.
Right.
And we're not, and so stop putting us on pedestals that you then want to knock us off of.
Right. Only to kick us off.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. This is Diva, Delivered, Inspired, Victorious, Anointed with my hoodlums and Dr. Dora. And it has been awesome discussing human sexuality. We'll figure out what we're going to talk about next. Thank you, ladies. I love you all. And I'm stopping the recording. Good
Love
night.
you too. Good night.